Hi, everyone. Excitingly, this week I'm joined by Matthew Morrissey, who is Organic Search Director for Europe at Adidas. And we work together, and it's very exciting to be able to do these kinds of conversations with folks who are on the front lines doing the hard yards of modern SEO. And every time we talk, I learn something. So I'm looking forward to Matt being able to share some of those insights with you all as well. So thank you for joining me. Where I thought we'd maybe start is Adidas is obviously a large multinational organization. What does SEO look like in that context, and how do the teams and responsibilities fit together?
Sure. Oh, hi, Will, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I think we have a fairly probably typical model for like a big brand, which is we have a global team, and then we have the market teams, and the market team is that I sit in is Europe, and the sort of roles and responsibilities is very broadly the global SEO team will kind of set strategy, maybe procure global tools and vendors. And then it's up to the market teams to actually run the business in their specific markets. So that's how the sort of global local model would work. And then in terms of what SEO actually looks like at Adidas, yeah, largely it's like any kind of e-commerce um, sort of digital company. So yeah, very much focused on content tech and offsite SEO, and it's mainly the challenge of having a lot of pages, a lot of potential keywords to go after, and hey, how to manage that at scale.
Yeah, obviously, a lot of what I'm excited to talk about today is the testing side of things. And one of the things that I've found most interesting about your approach is that I think you were one of the first folks I spoke to who set insights as a kind of top level goal of a testing program. And obviously, everybody wants the winners, and obviously, the uplifts pay the bills. But insights is a driver of so much more in a testing program. Can you talk a little bit more about, did you start there, or did you have a bit of a journey to discover that was something that was kind of.
We sort of just copied our CRO team
Mhm.
actually, which is the sort of yeah broadly one of the metrics they use. It's not the main metric, and obviously as a team that tests, they're way more advanced than we are in terms of how often they test, what they test, how they test. But yeah, we saw that obviously, yeah, wins are great, and having some kind of revenue number that you can put to a testing work stream is really good for everybody. Um, but having kind of any kind of learnings that might challenge your perception about what you thought was working, or maybe what Google says works or doesn't work, um, can also be really, yeah, really helpful as well. And I think, yeah, having insights also as some kind of KPI, you don't want to just run tests that you know are going to win, but aren't actually going to be useful to the business. But at the same time, I think you do want to also make sure that you're testing things that will hopefully lead to a rollout or a change in strategy, or protect something that maybe another team wants to remove or change, but is
Mhm.
helpful to the organic performance of the website. So that's probably, yeah, why we sort of look to insights as one of the main focuses of our tests.
Yeah, I think the thing you said about what Google says is interesting there as well, because I mean, you've seen it from the inside, but it's people kind of assume sometimes that the largest brands get a hotline or whatever special treatment, but very often that there's things that Google might say is you should be doing from a kind of best practice perspective that don't work, and that can sometimes be an insight all of its own, I guess as well.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we say here, like there's the version of Google and the internet that Google would like to exist, and then there's the actual reality. And yeah, I think everyone who tests probably knows that some of the advice they give is um, potentially well-meaning. Who knows, but maybe not what is going to drive results. Which is why testing is so important. because I think there's some pretty, I won't go into too much details, but I would say there's maybe some old school SEO stuff. I'm not talking about black hat stuff. I'm not talking about buying 500 links from someone on a blog or something like that. But maybe when it comes to, content that you might think don't work if you read the blogs and you look at the Webmaster Tools blog, or you look at third party like Search Engine or something like that. But then when you test it, you realize, oh, maybe this does actually still provide some value. And yeah, so that's where testing, I think, can really be invaluable, because you actually have something to hold on to make a decision based on that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think on that journey, I remember early on in the testing journey, speaking to you about a big focus on test cadence, and that's something that we've talked to a lot of folks around, of the fact that obviously if you're not running enough tests, you're never going to find those insights, and you're never going to move fast enough. But I think it's fair to say your journey has taken you even beyond that to more like a insight rate. Kind of combining what we were just talking about with running enough tests. So you're running powerful enough tests, I guess, is kind of the point there. And I think, is it fair to say that that's viewing the program as a whole as maturing, going from just get tests running, just get them out the door, to a focus on both power and speed?
Yeah, and I think also the more you test, you start to get a feel for what tests are going to be worth the effort for the result that they're going to get, based on, I think we're now quite good at looking at, if we make a change that affects a certain amount of pages, you can almost just eyeball the URLs and be like, we're not going to get a statistical significant result from that. There's too many outliers or seasonal pages. And there's also obviously the balance between, some of our tests are very easy for us to set up. It might just be a case of uploading some content to our CMS that takes a couple of clicks, and some of them might require some quite heavy dev work. And so you have to strike a balance between, trying to get that buy-in from the dev team, but hopefully having something to show to them afterwards that it was worth it, because you can only probably waste so much of their time on like tests that don't go anywhere before they start asking what the value is of using that time. But yeah, so I think indeed, like, obviously the best way to get insights is to run as many tests as possible at first, but then you will start to probably get an idea of what areas of your site give you the most amount of insights, whether that's more content or whether that's more a technical side of things. And yeah, you can base it off of that.
Yeah, yeah. The comment about engineering is interesting, because I did want to ask about how fitting into that wider culture. You've obviously got other experimentation teams. You've got other stakeholders, whether it's product engineering, leadership, whoever. A couple of things. One, have you seen the opportunity and the benefit of validating SEO impact of ideas that come from elsewhere in the organization, that that the product folks wants, for example, or engineering want to drive?
Yeah, so definitely, I think there's two sides to that. So you can. I think the nice thing with testing, obviously, is you can test sort of after the fact. You can run the data model on a change that has already gone live.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be the best way to set up a test, but it can still give you a result. So what you can do is you can look at some of the product releases that have maybe not been in your area, maybe done by a UX team or whoever, and start to say, well, has that had maybe like an unknown positive or an unknown negative impact on what we're doing? And I think that is where, you really see kind of the ideal testing setup, I think, would actually combine like CRO and SEO into a combined testing model. I think it's very hard for anyone at an enterprise company to do that, because you probably already have a very established CRO team that maybe use like an Optimizely or like another tool. So
Yep.
it's always going to be difficult. But if you have the data model that allows you to just look at changes even pre-post, then you can start to have conversations that go beyond just like, oh, Google say that's not good for SEO, so can you not do it, please?
Mm-hmm.
Into, oh, we can actually put a revenue number on if this is a harmful thing, and then that changes the conversation about the whether we should roll it out or not.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen all variations of that. I think we've also seen the case where it's not just a binary, go no go decision. It can be an iteration. It can be obviously there's an element of trade
Exactly.
off
Yeah.
involved, and yeah, that can kind of work quite nicely. Yeah, we have a few places where we run both the CRO and the SEO testing through our platform, but we also do sometimes do the analysis on where it's run in different platforms.
Yeah.
And it's actually really fascinating seeing some of the ideas that come through the pure product or pure
Yeah.
CRO side.
I have an actual example. I won't go into specifics, but there was a UX team made a change that basically changed an element on our grid pages that made some content a bit more keyword focused, a bit more descriptive. And the idea
Yep.
was if you make it more descriptive to a user, they'll probably click and convert on it more. That turned
Mm-hmm.
out not to be the case. The test was actually flat. So
Okay.
generally in that sense, in that scenario, the UX team wouldn't bother rolling it out because why roll out a flat test? But
Mm-hmm.
we also ran it, and as sort of expected, it did help increase quite substantially the traffic to those pages. So we actually linked up with that team and said, well, if it's not hurting conversion and it's helping traffic, why not just roll it out? And they're in the process of doing that now, which is great.
That's awesome. I love that. We often talk about that in the in the sales process, in the pitching stage of like one of the things that comes out of an SEO testing program is finding hidden value in things other teams are doing anyway.
Yeah.
But it's really great when you get kind of an actual concrete example of like, hey, yeah, like this actually happened and we actually did that. You alluded to something else there that I want to touch on, which was the idea of the communication piece and the data stories. I guess is probably what I call them. We've talked a little bit there about the relationship with with engineering when you're asking them to do things and you get to close that loop and you go back to them and say, hey, that thing you did turned out to drive bottom line for the business. Pat on the back, visibility, whatever it might be. With folks like product, it's about again that feedback loop to their work. What have you seen in going to leadership or kind of outside the SEO org when you've been able to tell those stories? Has that made a difference on that side as well?
Yeah, I think it's made a huge difference. I think before, and probably anyone who's worked in SEO, especially at enterprise level, will have had this before. When you try to put revenue numbers on stuff, you can either go so granular into like looking at specific keywords in Search Console or whatever that you get a number that's so small, you're like, this can't be right. And also, even if it is, like, nobody cares, like, no one's
Yeah.
going to be impressed by this. Or you take it from, okay, well, these keywords have this much search volume and an assumed click through rate. And you end up with a number so big that it's not credible.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this gives a much more, like, what we've seen with the test is it gives a much more credible and realistic number in terms of revenue impact, which gives, I think, the SEO team more confidence to sort of shout about what we're doing. And it
Mm-hmm.
resonates a lot more. I think in general, obviously, a lot of digital first companies, um, yeah, I don't know how much Adidas would be a digital first company, but a lot of digital focused companies have a test and learn culture. So if you can shape SEO that way, you're already going to be speaking to senior leadership in a language they understand and that really resonates with them way more than, oh, this keyword went up from position 7 to position 5. Like that doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people. It doesn't even mean a much in SEO nowadays, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think it can, yeah, I mean, it can really help in terms of like the politics of navigating a business, and whether that's just helping your own career, helping your team get more resources, helping kind of embed SEO in some of the processes that it should be embedded in. I think a testing work stream can be so invaluable to that because you're basically speaking the same language as everybody else in the company when it comes to business impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I these days have the more kind of I was going to say blinkered. Let's call it focused view on just the things that we work on. But obviously, your remit is much broader. And have you seen kind of compounding benefits of the fact that because you've got the testing work stream and because that work stream is throwing out those kind of, like you say, credible ROI numbers, with metrics attached to them. Does that benefit your other work streams? Does that kind of credibility rub off, and now people pay more attention or believe more the other things that you do?
Yeah, I think in terms of faith in what we're doing, um, I think that can definitely help. I think for my particular example, I think that was never a challenge, but I could definitely see how testing could be a gateway into like building trust if you don't have it currently, or building visibility. I think one thing that can be really good at, especially if you have a savvy dev team or a savvy PO, is getting extra dev resource, because
Mm.
obviously I think any product team struggles with putting revenue numbers to changes, particularly if it's changes that are more based on scalability or helping teams save time. Whereas if you just have this, if you're able to just do 2 or 3 tests a quarter where you can put like 2 million revenue, 5 million revenue, whatever, and they can just package that up, someone cynical might be like, well, that's not the real revenue, right? But like neither is CRO. It's all like it's the same way that any sort of product team go about showcasing their value. And
Yep.
that is where I think you can really, see compound, because then you can get additional dev resource, not just to run more tests, but also to roll out things that you actually want to roll out as
Yep.
well. And I do think like on the visibility piece as well, you can auto like we have sort of got to a stage now where when we showcase our testing results, we use exactly the same slide format as the CRO team. And I
Hmm.
think that also then lends you some credibility as a team as well, because you're kind of, it doesn't seem like SEO is this separate siloed thing that people don't really understand. It's something that actually is embedded in this like test and learn culture at your
Yeah.
organization as well.
Speaking the same language. Yeah,
Exactly.
I like that because, as you said, I think it's very common. I think a lot of places have had UX testing, CRO testing capabilities for much longer than they've had SEO testing. I mean,
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
you were a fairly early adopter in SEO testing, and even there, your organization's had the CRO for longer, so
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Way longer.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, on the global piece, the obviously we have relationships with all the bits, but you have your responsibility. But is there still what kind of surprising things have you learned about what does or doesn't generalize, or kind of are you looking at their testing backlogs and thinking, oh, well, yeah, we'll try that idea here? Do you test everything in different markets? How do you think about it?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to content, it really does seem like not everything performs in the way that you would expect or in a uniform way. And that
Mm,
probably has something to do with the way things are localized and translated, I'm guessing.
yeah.
Um, there's always a balance, I think, in terms of wanting to make sure what works in one market works in another versus just speed. Like, for instance, if you have a win on a piece of schema markup, do you really need to test it again?
Hmm.
Is it going to, like, even if it's flat, it probably won't be negative. So the cost of setting up a new test with a development resource, etc., versus just rolling it out if you get a win in whatever market, even if it's not yours. Um, but we do tend, I think any test that you would look at and think maybe there's an element of risk involved here, there's a possibility that this test could be negative, even if it's positive in this market, we would probably look to retest.
Mm,
And that's where I think you see, ideally you would have probably content tests set up on a market level that require relatively low legwork to set up,
yep.
like a
Hmm.
CMS, and then more technical based code changes that are done maybe on a global tech level, that allow you to just roll out across markets if you get a successful result.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And more broadly, one of the things we've talked a lot about is where do great ideas come from? Um, I'm sure in your case they come from your team, from other global teams, from partners and agencies and so forth. But you've also talked about getting that kind of sense of what might work. How have you how's your changing evolved? Sorry, changing thinking evolved when it comes to ideation.
Yeah. Well, they rarely come from me. They normally come from the team. um, I think there's an element of I think one nice thing now is obviously testing is a bit more sort of widespread in SEO now,
Hmm.
and people are quite relatively open about what they're testing. So yeah, I mean, we even have just looked at the newsletters you sent out and taken ideas and adapted them,
Yeah.
search engine land. Then there's the just what you might know that's specific to your brand. So maybe you have something, you have a couple of USPs, next day delivery, whatever,
Hmm.
something, an exclusive product, and you can play around maybe testing that in content. And that requires maybe a little bit more. You just need to really be embedded in your business and think like a consumer and
Yeah.
what would they want. Um, and then like there's an element of pragmatism as well. There's tests are going to take a couple of months to set up versus ones that are going to take a couple of days. And that can also kind of, in a weird way, the restriction on what you can test maybe forces you to get a little bit creative in what you're testing as well. Um, so yeah, I think it's the another exciting thing about the testing work stream we have here, and I think it would be the same anywhere, is it does sort of encourage that side of SEO where it is a little bit creative and people do like to nerd out a little bit and debate
Hmm.
things. And like it's I think if you can create a culture where everyone feels that they can submit a test idea, obviously you're going to need an owner
Hmm.
who prioritizes that into some kind of roadmap. But yeah, I think they can really come from anywhere. We've taken inspiration from what the CRO team roll out as well. Um, and yeah, also just looking at competitor sites, seeing what they're doing differently, seeing maybe we should try that.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of different uh, avenues for like ideas, and then it's just weighing that up against what's actually feasible in terms of rolling out.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think the thing you said there about it, the ideas can come from anywhere because anybody can submit an idea. It feels less daunting, I think, maybe for especially for junior team members to submit an idea versus to submit a suggestion or proposal that we should definitely do this thing.
Yeah,
It's it
exactly.
does feel more accessible, perhaps.
Yeah, and you start to, I think if you get too focused on the testing, I think you start to forget that some of the best tests are some of the most simple ones. So
Mm.
you can be really thinking about, okay, yeah, all this like sort of high-end tech stuff we can do is going to need 2 months dev resource. How are we going to organize this? And then someone might come in and be like, well, we have like free delivery. Why don't we put that in a meta description? Oh, I never thought about that. Why don't we just do
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
So that can also really help. Yeah, sort of if you democratize the ideation,
yeah. That's
but
good.
and also actually not just that, but kind of create a culture where it's expected that people sort of chirp up with ideas as well.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes do the legwork. You mentioned kind of competitors or whatever. Like that requires research, doesn't it?
Yep.
Requires
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
getting out there and doing some digging. But yeah, there's so much we could go into. I'm very conscious of your time. Really grateful for taking a bit of time to share your insights and expertise. I know that on the agency side, on the vendor side, everybody's always doing the conference circuit and whatever else. If is there anything either personal or from the Adidas side in general that you want people to check out? Is there where do job openings come, for example, or how could people get involved if they're keen?
Yeah. So there is actually there's buy some Adidas shoes. Firstly, that's what I think. No, I'm joking.
Google
Yeah,
it first.
yeah. So please don't click on the paid ad. No, so we have currently opening for some intern intakes, which is across actually it's for people who are in full-time study. If you go to my LinkedIn, I've posted about it with all of the conditions. So probably I don't know how many people watching this would be eligible for that, but maybe they know someone who would be.
Definitely,
There's
they could
also
reshare that for sure. Yeah,
exactly there's also actually at the moment a full-time position in the global SEO team, which I will share with you after this as well. Um, both based in Amsterdam. So yeah, if you're interested in that, please reach out to me on LinkedIn.
nice. Yeah, I think a big part of what we are trying to do at Search Pilot is actually make SEO jobs better. That it gets more respect, gets more done, gets visibility in the organization, gets influence, gets all those things. And I've certainly seen that on the broader team at Adidas, getting that kind of visibility and influence. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's great. Thank you for taking the time. Great to speak to you as always. And speak to you again soon.
Great. Cheers, Will. Thanks.